Welcome back, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into the world of Ramana Maharshi, a figure who, even today, continues to intrigue and inspire so many spiritual seekers.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we're going to be looking specifically at a chapter from Arthur Osborne's biography, Ramana Maharshi and the Path of Self-Knowledge.
Okay.
And we're going to try to see if we can unlock some of the secrets behind his really, really unique approach to spiritual guidance, his Upadesa.
Yeah, Osborne, he kind of jumps right into the heart of it, you know, this mystery surrounding Ramana Maharshi's Upadesa. You know, he was known for being open, accessible. You know, he would answer questions from anyone who sought him out. But his guidance it was so subtle that some people, they perceived him as almost indifferent.
Wow. So it's like this real paradox that Osborne brings out, you know?
Yeah.
How can someone be so active in guiding others, yet at the same time leave this kind of, this impression of detachment?
Yeah.
Why was his Upadesa so secret?
That's the question, you know? It's puzzled a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think one answer might lie in the traditional understanding of the guru's role in spiritual awakening.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, the idea that true realization, it often comes through the grace of a guru.
Yeah.
And Osborne categorizes gurus into like 3 levels.
Okay.
You've got the ordained, but not necessarily spiritually attained.
Right.
Then there's the spiritually attained who guide disciples up to their level.
Right.
But then at the top, there's the Sadguru,
who's
realized oneness with the self.
And that's the highest level.
Like the top tier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's clear, you know, from Osborne's account, he places Ramana Maharshi right in this category.
Right.
He's a Sadguru.
Which makes it even more perplexing that he often claimed to have no disciples.
And he never explicitly claimed to be a guru.
Exactly.
I mean, that seems almost like contradictory.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And there's this great story that Osborne recounts about Major Chadwick.
Okay.
He was a devoted disciple of Ramana Maharshi, and he kept kind of pushing him on this point.
Really?
Yeah, he's basically saying, you say a guru is necessary, but you also say you're not a guru.
Yeah.
So where does that leave me?
What was his response to that? I mean, that's kind of a bold, bold line of questioning.
Yeah, well, he kind of sidesteps the question, you know, in a way.
Okay.
And he used this idea of like doctrinal impossibility.
Oh, wow.
Like, for a true Jnani, someone who has realized the self, it's impossible for them to claim to have disciples.
Okay.
Because they don't see any separation between themselves and others.
Right.
So it's like this clever way to deflect those who aren't genuinely seeking, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
But at the same time, he's reassuring the true devotees.
Yeah. Do you think that was like a deliberate strategy on his part, like a way to weed out like the totalists?
Yeah, it's like he was testing their sincerity, you know?
Yeah.
And those who are genuinely seeking, they would understand, you know?
I get it.
Yeah, the deeper meaning.
Yeah.
But those who are just kind of curious or looking for an easy fix, they probably just move on.
Yeah. And it really speaks to his understanding of human nature.
Totally, yeah.
And also of the subtleties of the spiritual path.
Absolutely.
It's like he's not just throwing it out there to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, he's really making sure that those who are coming to him are ready.
Yeah.
This idea of Ramana Maharshi subtly assessing his disciples reminds me of another point that Osborne makes.
Yeah.
The 3 modes of initiation, you know, touch, look, and silence.
Oh, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, these go beyond just words.
You know, initiation by look, for instance.
Right.
That seems to have been a tangible experience for many of his devotees.
Totally.
Osborne describes it as like this really powerful sensation, almost like an electric current.
Wow.
Or a wave of peace and light.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like washing over them.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty wild.
Totally.
He even quotes a devotee who claimed that they could hear like a vibration emanating from his eyes.
Wow, from his eyes.
Yeah, it's pretty intense stuff. What about initiation through silence? How did that manifest?
Well, there's a great story about Natesa Mudaliar.
Okay.
And he received guidance in a dream.
Oh, wow.
So like an example of
Munadiksha.
Initiation through silence.
Okay.
And it seemed particularly suited, this form of transmission,
to
the path of self-inquiry,
right,
which, as we'll explore later, relies on this turning inwards, on silencing the mind,
right,
to discover that truth within.
Right.
So it makes sense that this form of initiation would be connected.
Yeah. It's like he's working on multiple levels,
Absolutely.
like silence, touch, even his gaze,
totally,
to guide his disciples towards this self-realization.
Yeah.
But Osborne also emphasizes, though, the importance of satsang.
Satsang, yeah.
In Ramana Maharshi's teachings.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate a little bit on what satsang actually means?
Yeah, so satsang literally means association with being.
Okay.
But in this context, it refers to like the transformative power of just being in the presence of a realized being.
Right.
Like Ramana Maharshi.
Yeah.
And there's a really lovely anecdote about the 5 supplementary verses praising satsang.
Okay.
They were actually found unexpectedly tucked away, like wrapped around some sweets.
Oh, wow. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's like they were...
like a divine message.
Totally.
Hidden in a treat.
Totally. Yeah.
So, and then to illustrate the subtle but like profound effect of satsang,
Okay.
Osborne tells a story about Sundaresa Iyer.
Oh, okay.
And he was questioning the efficacy of just being in Ramana Maharshi's presence because he wasn't experiencing any dramatic changes.
Right, yeah.
And Ramana Maharshi's response to that was so insightful.
What did he say?
Well, he likened it to a mother feeding her child at night.
Okay.
Like the child may not be aware of being nourished, but the nourishment is happening nonetheless.
Yeah.
It's a perfect analogy, you know?
Yeah.
But what struck me is that later on, Ramana Maharshi actually corrected Sundaresa Iyer's song.
He did.
Yeah.
Wow.
So clarifying that the grace flowing from a Sadguru it's not passive.
Okay.
You know, it's a conscious and deliberate act.
Okay, so there's an intentionality behind it.
Yeah.
It's not just like happening.
No, it's a purposeful outpouring.
Yeah.
You know,
directed towards those who are receptive.
Right.
Not just chance.
Yeah. It's fascinating, and I think this is really where it gets to the heart of what we're talking about with Ramana Maharshi's teachings, which is that satsang is not, a magical solution.
No.
You don't just go sit in the presence of a realized being.
Yeah.
Boom. Transformation.
No. The disciple also has to make an effort.
Yeah.
Engage in practice.
Right.
Turn inwards.
And that brings us to the core sadhana, the central practice that he really advocated for.
Yeah.
Self-inquiry.
Self-inquiry, vichara.
Yeah. This is where it gets really interesting, you know?
Absolutely.
We've talked about Upadesa, the Guru's grace, satsang.
Right.
It all comes down to this practice.
It does, yeah.
So vichara, often translated as self-inquiry, but it goes beyond mere intellectual questioning.
Absolutely. You're asking yourself, who am I?
Right.
Not to come up with an answer, a philosophical answer, but to directly experience the truth.
Right.
Like the truth of your being.
Yeah. So it's less about finding an answer.
Yeah.
It's more about dissolving the question itself.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
And Ramana Maharshi emphasized, that this is a practice to be done during meditation.
Okay.
And you focus your attention on the spiritual heart.
Right. Now, it's important to understand here, we're not talking about...
No, not the physical heart.
No, it's a specific energy center,
Okay.
It's located on the right side of the chest.
Right. And Osborne recounts this conversation where Ramana Maharshi explained this to a devotee.
Yeah.
And he's like, even if you don't have a direct experience of it, you kind of already know where it is.
Totally.
So he had him point to himself. And naturally, he pointed to the right side of the chest.
Right where the spiritual heart is.
Right, where the spiritual heart is said to reside.
Absolutely.
It's like this beautiful illustration of how this knowledge is already within us.
Yeah.
Even if we're not.
Even if we don't realize it.
Consciously aware of it. Yeah. So, you focus on the spiritual heart and you ask, who am I?
Yeah.
And then what?
Well, thoughts will arise, right? But instead of getting caught up in them, the key is to just observe them.
Okay.
To question their source.
Okay.
And ultimately, to bring your attention back to, who am I?
Okay. It's like a mental decluttering.
Totally. Yeah.
You're not suppressing the thoughts.
No.
But you're not letting them run wild either.
Yeah.
You're observing them.
Yeah.
Recognizing their impermanent nature and letting them go.
That's it.
And what's really interesting is that even impure,
negative thoughts should be dealt with this way.
Absolutely.
Osborne likens this process to like psychoanalysis.
Yeah, like bringing those hidden parts of ourselves.
Right, like the shadow self.
Totally, yeah.
To the surface, to be purified.
So it's not about like repressing those shadows.
No, it's about facing them.
Yeah, totally.
And he was very clear that using mantras or other thought forms during this self-inquiry was counterproductive.
Yeah, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Right, like as Osborne puts it, the true answer will come of itself.
Yeah.
No answer the ego can be right.
That's it.
So it's about going beyond the limitations of the thinking mind.
Yeah, beyond those mental constructs.
Yeah.
To pure awareness.
And through consistent practice, that awareness kind of permeates, not just our meditations, but every moment of our lives.
Absolutely.
It's about integrating this deep inner work into our daily experience.
Totally.
But isn't that like having your cake and eating it too?
Well, how do you mean?
Traditionally, you had to renounce the world, to like detach from material possessions, social entanglements, all this stuff.
Right.
He seems to suggest that we can be engaged in the world and still be on this path.
Yeah, I think that's what makes his teaching so relevant, especially today for modern seekers.
Yeah.
Like, he saw every situation, every thought, every emotion as this opportunity to practice vichara, to delve deeper into the mystery of the self.
So instead of seeing the world as a distraction, we can use it as a training ground.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And to illustrate this point, Osborne tells the story of Jamnalal Bajaj, who asked Ramana Maharshi about the desire for Swaraj or political independence. You'd expect a spiritual teacher to discourage, worldly aspirations. But Ramana Maharshi's reply was so much more nuanced than that.
Yeah, it was. He emphasized the importance of acting selflessly, surrendering to a higher power, and not being attached to the outcome.
So it wasn't about like abandoning the pursuit.
No, not at all.
Political freedom. But rather about approaching it with the right intention. With a sense of detachment from the results.
Exactly.
Essentially what he's saying is like, act from a place of inner alignment.
Totally,
rather than, ego-driven desire.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that kind of speaks to a broader theme in Ramana Maharshi's teachings, This idea that true harmony comes from self-knowledge.
Right.
And there's a conversation between Ramana Maharshi and Paul Brunton about the future of the world.
Right.
Brunton's concerned about, the state of affairs. And Ramana Maharshi's response was essentially, why worry about the future when you don't even understand the present?
Right.
Understand yourself first, and then you'll understand the world.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so good, isn't it?
That's so powerful. It reminds me of that saying, like, be the change.
Totally.
But it goes even deeper than that,
Yeah.
It's not about, like, willpower or positive thinking.
Yeah. It's about a fundamental shift in consciousness.
Right.
This recognition that our inner state is reflected in the outer world.
It is. And this brings us to a point that I find so intriguing and also kind of paradoxical about his teachings, is this accessibility of vichara.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah. Traditionally, this was a secret teaching. Something reserved for advanced seekers.
Right.
Yet here's Ramana Maharshi just openly sharing it with anyone who showed genuine interest. Why do you think he chose to break from that tradition?
I think he recognized the unique needs of our time.
Okay.
In an age where seeking is so widespread, but finding a true guru can be a real challenge. Maybe he made this pertinent practice available to everyone. To empower individuals to awaken to their own divinity.
That's a radical shift in perspective.
It is.
It's almost like he democratized this profound spiritual path. And what's even more remarkable, I think, is that this accessibility extends beyond any specific religion.
It does.
Remember Osborne's example of the French lady?
Yeah, the French lady.
Who, after visiting Ramana Maharshi, became
I love that story.
A devout Catholic. It wasn't about converting people to a particular belief system. It was about awakening them to a deeper truth within themselves.
Within
a truth that transcends like religious boundaries.
Totally.
And like cultural conditioning.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a key point that Osborne highlights.
Yeah.
The intertwining of jnana, bhakti, and karma in his teachings.
The 3 paths. Yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping we'd get to this.
Yeah.
Could you kind of unpack these terms for our listeners and explain how they relate to Ramana Maharshi's path?
Yeah, so jnana is the path of knowledge, specifically the knowledge of the self.
Okay.
Bhakti is the path of devotion.
Okay.
It's a loving surrender to a higher power.
Okay.
And then karma is the path of action, like right action.
Right.
That stems from understanding and compassion.
Okay. So are these separate paths?
Well, that's a good question.
Leading to the same destination?
Yeah.
Or are they somehow interconnected?
Well, Ramana Maharshi, he didn't see them as separate paths.
Okay.
But rather as complementary aspects of the spiritual journey. And Osborne points out, that submission to a guru, bhakti, can lead to self-inquiry, jnana, and vice versa.
Okay, yeah.
So when we truly surrender, it quiets the mind.
Right.
Which creates the space for inner inquiry.
Right.
And as we go deeper into self-inquiry, it often cultivates a really profound sense of devotion, a love for the self that extends outwards to all beings.
Yeah. It's like they're feeding each other.
Totally, yeah.
It's like a positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
But what about karma? The path of action.
Yeah.
Does self-inquiry lead to inaction?
Not at all.
Like a sense of resignation?
In fact, Ramana Maharshi didn't advocate for passive resignation at all.
Okay.
But rather for engaging in the world with a sense of detachment and surrender.
Okay. And Osborne uses this great analogy to illustrate this point.
Yeah. He compares it to a train passenger who insists on carrying their luggage, even though the train's already taking it to their destination.
Yeah.
A wiser passenger just puts their luggage on the rack and relaxes.
It's not about giving up on your goals or responsibilities. It's about recognizing that ultimately the outcome isn't entirely in our control.
Totally.
You can do your part. You can take action, but you need to let go of the need to control those results.
Absolutely. And that surrender doesn't mean we become passive or indifferent. It's about aligning our actions with a higher purpose. Acting from a place of love and wisdom rather than ego-driven desires. So going back to that story of Jamilal Bajaj and his question about Swaraj. His response wasn't to condemn the desire for political freedom. It was to emphasize the importance of acting selflessly, surrendering to the divine will.
And not being attached to the outcome.
That's it.
That's such a great message, though, for anyone engaged in activism,
Totally.
Or social change work.
Absolutely.
It's not about giving up on those ideals, but rather about approaching them with a sense of humility. Detachment. Recognizing that we're instruments of like a larger force.
Like we're co-creating with the universe, playing our part in the larger plan.
Right. And this brings us back to that crucial link, between our inner state and the state of the world.
Absolutely.
Ramana Maharshi believed that true peace in the world could only come from individuals finding that peace within themselves.
Totally.
And Osborne shares that insightful conversation between Ramana Maharshi and Paul Brunton, where this was so beautifully expressed.
Yeah, it was.
Brunton was worried about the future of the world. And Ramana Maharshi said, essentially, understand yourself first.
Totally.
And then you'll understand the world. It's a profound reminder, that lasting change starts within.
Absolutely.
By transforming our own consciousness, we create ripples that extend outwards.
Totally.
Influencing the collective in ways that we might not even be able to comprehend.
We don't even realize.
And this brings us to what I find to be honestly one of the most fascinating aspects of his teachings is this accessibility of Vichara.
It's wild.
As we've discussed, this practice was traditionally considered a secret teaching. Reserved for
the advanced.
For advanced seekers.
But
Ramana Maharshi chose to share it openly.
With everyone.
With anyone.
Yeah.
Who was genuinely interested.
Yeah.
Why do you think he chose to break from tradition?
It's so interesting, isn't it?
In this way.
It is. Well, maybe it was his way of responding to the needs of our time.
Okay.
You know, in an age when seeking is widespread, but finding a true guru can be difficult.
Right.
He made this potent practice available to all.
Yeah. Expert. So picking up where we left off, it seems like Ramana Maharshi was really turning the traditional approach to spiritual seeking on its head.
Yeah.
Instead of renouncing the world to find enlightenment, he's encouraging his disciples to engage with it.
Yeah, yeah.
To see everyday life as a training ground for self-realization. Do you think that resonates with how people approach spirituality today?
I think so, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely an appealing concept, you know, for a lot of modern seekers, this idea that we don't have to choose between living a fulfilling life in the world and pursuing spiritual growth. You know, Ramana Maharshi saw every situation, every thought, every emotion as an opportunity to practice vichara.
Right.
So instead of getting swept away by the drama of life, we can use those experiences to inquire into the nature of the self.
Right. So let's say you're facing a difficult situation, right?
Okay.
How would you apply vichara in that moment?
Well, instead of getting lost in the emotions or the story that you're telling yourself about the situation, you can pause and ask, to whom is this happening?
Right, right.
And remember, it's not about coming up with like a clever answer.
Right.
It's more about just shifting your perspective, you know?
Yeah.
Disidentifying from the I that thinks it's experiencing these challenges.
That's a really subtle but powerful shift.
Yeah, it is.
It's like you're stepping back from the drama.
Totally.
And observing it with a sense of detachment.
Yeah.
And this same principle, you know, can be applied to any experience, not just the difficult ones.
Right.
You know, let's say you're like indulging in a daydream.
Yeah.
About some future success.
Yeah.
You know, instead of like feeding that ego-driven narrative, you can bring in that vichara.
Yeah.
You know, and ask, who is it that desires this success?
Right.
And by consistently doing this, we start to loosen the grip of the ego.
Yeah.
You know, that sense of a separate self that's constantly seeking fulfillment in things.
Exactly.
It's like you're shining a light on those hidden corners of the mind where the ego likes to hide.
Totally. Yeah.
Those unconscious patterns that drive so much of our behavior.
Absolutely.
And Osborne, he makes this really fascinating comparison between sadhana, spiritual practice, and psychoanalysis.
Yeah. He says they both aim to clear out the filth from the subconscious, brings it up to the light of day, and destroys it.
It's like taking out the trash.
Yeah.
So by bringing awareness to these unconscious patterns, we start to free ourselves from their control.
That's it.
So it's not just about eradicating like negative thoughts and emotions.
Yeah, it's about questioning all thoughts.
Right.
Even the seemingly benign ones.
Because even those
they can be subtly
really ego-driven.
Totally.
And that's why, you know, he discouraged the use of like mantras or affirmations during self-inquiry.
Yeah, because it kind of defeats the purpose, you know.
Right. As Osborne puts it, the true answer to who am I will emerge spontaneously from a place beyond the thinking mind.
Yeah, it's not something you can think your way to.
It's about going beyond that realm of mental constructs.
Totally.
The stories we tell ourselves about who we are.
Absolutely.
To tap into that pure awareness that's always present.
Always there.
Regardless of our thoughts or feelings.
Yeah.
But even then, you know, Osborne cautions that we need to be vigilant. Because the ego is sneaky. It'll try to creep back in. He uses this really striking analogy.
Love that one.
You know, he compares it to like the Israelites allowing the Gentiles to remain in the promised land. Only to have those Gentiles later rise up and challenge their rule.
It's so good.
That's it's a powerful analogy, you know?
It is.
It highlights like the ongoing nature of this inner work.
Right. It's not about reaching an end goal.
Right. It's not like you get there and then you're done.
No, it's a continual process.
Yeah, it's a constant like
refinement,
purification and refinement.
Of deepening our understanding.
Right. And this reminds me of the conversation we were having before about, you know, the intertwining of jnana, bhakti, and karma.
Right.
Osborne points out that, you know, while the path of self-inquiry, jnana, may appear distinct from the path of devotion, bhakti, they're actually deeply interconnected.
Yeah, he suggests that like surrender to a guru or a higher power, bhakti, can naturally lead to self-inquiry, and vice versa.
Okay, so when we truly surrender, it quiets the mind.
Totally.
Creating the space for that inner inquiry.
Exactly.
And as we go deeper into self-inquiry, it often cultivates a profound sense of devotion, a love for the self that extends outwards to all beings.
A love that doesn't discriminate.
Yeah. So it's like those two paths are feeding into each other.
Totally.
Like creating this positive feedback loop.
Yeah.
But what about karma, the path of action?
Right.
Does self-inquiry lead to inaction?
Not at all.
A sense of resignation?
No. Ramana Maharshi didn't advocate for passive resignation at all.
Yeah.
He advocated for engaging in the world, but with this sense of detachment and surrender.
Okay.
And he uses this great analogy. He compares it to a train passenger who insists on carrying their luggage, even though the train is already taking it to the destination.
Yeah.
And a wiser passenger just puts their luggage on the rack and relaxes.
It's not about giving up on our goals and responsibilities.
No, not at all. It's about recognizing that ultimately the outcome, it's not entirely in our control.
Right. We can do our part. We can take action. But we need to let go of the need to control those results.
Totally. And surrender doesn't mean that we become passive or indifferent.
Right.
It's about aligning our actions with a higher purpose. Acting from a place of love and wisdom rather than ego-driven desires.
And that brings us back to that story of Jamnalal Bajaj and his question about Swaraj. Ramana Maharshi's response wasn't to condemn the desire for political freedom, but to emphasize the importance of acting selflessly, surrendering to the divine will, and not being attached to the outcome.
Totally.
That's a powerful message for anyone.
It is.
Engaged in activism.
Yeah.
Or social change work.
Totally,
It's not about giving up on our ideals, but rather about approaching them with a sense of humility and detachment. Recognizing that we're instruments of a larger force.
Totally, like we're co-creating with the universe.
Yeah.
Playing our part in a larger plan.
And this brings us back to that crucial link, between our inner state and the state of the world.
Right.
Ramana Maharshi believed that true peace in the world could only come from individuals finding that peace within themselves.
Totally.
And Osborne shares that really insightful conversation between Ramana Maharshi and Paul Brunton, where this was so beautifully expressed.
It was.
Brunton's worried about the future of the world.
Right.
And Ramana Maharshi's response was essentially, understand yourself first, and then you'll understand the world.
That's it.
It's such a profound reminder,
It is.
That lasting change starts within. By transforming our own consciousness, we create ripples that extend outwards.
Totally.
Influencing the collective in ways we might not even be able to comprehend.
You don't even realize it. Yeah.
And this brings us to what I find to be one of the most fascinating aspects of his teachings. The accessibility of the vichara.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is. As we've discussed, this practice was traditionally considered a secret teaching.
Right, for the advanced.
Reserved for advanced seekers. But Ramana Maharshi chose to share it openly.
With everyone.
With anyone who is genuinely interested. Why do you think he chose to break from tradition in this way?
I think maybe it was his way of responding to the needs of our time.
Okay.
In an age where seeking is so widespread, but finding a true guru can be so challenging.
Right.
He made this potent practice available to all.
Right.
To empower individuals to awaken to their own divinity.
It's almost like he democratized this profound spiritual path.
Really.
And what's even more remarkable, I think, is that this accessibility extends beyond the confines of any particular religion.
It does.
Remember Osborne's example of that French lady?
The French lady.
Who, after her encounter with Ramana Maharshi, became a devout Catholic.
I love that story.
It wasn't about converting people
No.
to a specific belief system.
Right.
It was about awakening them to a deeper truth.
Totally.
Within themselves.
Within themselves.
A truth that transcends religious boundaries and cultural conditioning.
Yeah.
And this speaks to the universal nature of Ramana Maharshi's teachings.
Totally, yeah.
You know, he offered a path that wasn't about dogma or ritual, but about a direct experience of the self, the core of our being.
Totally.
Which he identified as pure consciousness.
Yeah.
Ultimately one with the divine.
Yeah.
And that realization, as he taught, is what liberates us from suffering.
Yeah.
And leads to lasting peace and happiness.
Yeah. It's the ultimate goal of all spiritual seeking, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that, you know, he didn't see the paths of jnana, bhakti, and karma as like mutually exclusive, but rather as complementary aspects of the spiritual journey.
Totally,
We touched on that earlier. Could you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, so jnana, the path of knowledge, leads to the realization of our true nature, the self.
Okay.
Bhakti, the path of devotion, involves surrendering to a higher power, which helps quiet the mind and open the heart. And karma, the path of action, guides us to live in alignment with that understanding, to act from a place of compassion and wisdom.
So it's not about choosing one path.
No, not at all.
Over another.
Yeah.
It's recognizing that they all ultimately lead to the same destination.
Yeah, they all converge,
And what's so unique about his approach, you know, is that he didn't believe that you needed to cultivate like specific virtues.
Right.
Or like achieve a certain level of like
moral perfection.
Before embarking on this journey.
He actually said those divine qualities.
Let's flip the script.
They arise naturally as a result of self-realization.
Right. Not as a means to it. It's such a liberating concept.
It is,
It's like it takes the pressure off of trying to become something we're not.
Totally.
And allows us to just be, to rest in the awareness of our true self. And that's where the practice of vichara becomes so crucial.
It is, It helps us dismantle that illusion of a separate self, the ego, which is the source of so much suffering.
And as we discussed, it's not just a practice for meditation. Ramana Maharshi encouraged his devotees to engage in self-inquiry.
Totally.
Throughout the day. In every situation they encountered.
Every situation becomes an opportunity.
It's about bringing that awareness, that questioning into our everyday experience. You know, every thought, every emotion, every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice vichara, to ask who is experiencing this.
Totally,
And by consistently doing this, we start to loosen the grip of the ego. Revealing the peace and freedom that lie beneath.
Totally. It's a journey of self-discovery that has the potential to transform our lives from the inside out.
And I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive into Ramana Maharshi's life and teachings. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Ramana Maharshi, I keep coming back to this idea of his open teaching style.
It's pretty revolutionary when you think about it.
Traditionally, specific spiritual practices or sadhanas, they were considered sacred, you know, and were only transmitted directly from guru to disciple. How did he reconcile that?
That's a great question.
With this decision to make the vichar accessible to everyone?
Well, I think Osborne offers a really compelling answer. He suggests that by openly sharing the vichara, Ramana Maharshi was essentially acting as the Sadguru for all seeking souls. You know, transcending the limitations of physical presence.
So even though he couldn't be physically present for everyone, his teachings, his grace, his very being in the world made this path available to anyone.
To anyone who resonated with it.
That's a pretty profound concept.
It is.
To consider, isn't it?
It really challenges that traditional notion that spiritual awakening is dependent on a direct lineage, on receiving teachings from a living guru.
Right. It's almost like he was saying that the true guru resides within each of us. And the vichara is the key.
It's the key to unlocking it.
to unlocking that inner wisdom.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what makes this even more remarkable is that this accessibility extends beyond any specific religion.
Right. We keep coming back to that, but it's so important.
It's huge.
Yeah.
You know, remember Osborne's example of the French lady who, after visiting Ramana Maharshi, embraced Catholicism?
Yeah, with a renewed fervor. It's so wild.
It's amazing.
It really shows, like, it wasn't about
converting people.
Converting people,
to a belief system.
To a specific belief system,
It's about awakening them to a deeper truth.
Within themselves.
Yeah, within themselves.
You know, a truth that transcends, like, religious boundaries and cultural conditioning.
Totally. Yeah.
It really highlights the universal nature of his teachings.
Absolutely.
You know, he offered a path that wasn't about dogma or ritual,
but
about a direct experience of the self.
Yeah, the core of our being.
Yeah, which he identified as pure consciousness, ultimately one with the divine.
One with the divine, yeah.
And that realization, as he taught, is what liberates us from suffering.
Yeah.
And leads to lasting peace and happiness.
It's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
It really is.
Of all spiritual seeking.
Yeah. And it's important to remember, I think, that he didn't see the paths of jnana, bhakti, and karma as mutually exclusive.
Yeah, he saw them as complementary.
Just complementary,
Yeah.
Aspects of the spiritual journey.
Totally.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on how those three paths, which seem so different on the surface, actually converge towards that same goal?
Yeah, so jnana, the path of knowledge, leads us to the realization of our true nature, the self-bhakti. The path of devotion involves surrendering to a higher power, which helps quiet the mind and open the heart. And karma, the path of action, guides us to live in alignment with that understanding, to act from a place of compassion and wisdom.
Right. So it's not about choosing one path over the other.
No.
But recognizing that they all ultimately lead to the same destination.
Yeah, they all converge.
Yeah. And what's so unique about his approach, you know, is that he didn't believe that you needed to cultivate specific virtues. Or achieve like a certain level of moral perfection. Before embarking on this journey.
No, he flipped the script.
He flipped the script on that, didn't he?
He said those divine qualities, they arise naturally as a result of self-realization.
Right, not as a means to it.
Yeah.
Such a liberating concept.
Yes,
It takes the pressure off of trying to become something we're not.
Yeah, totally.
And allows us to just rest in the awareness of our true self.
Yeah.
And that's where the practice of vichara becomes so crucial.
Yeah, it helps us dismantle that illusion of a separate self, the ego.
The ego,
which is the root of so much suffering.
And as we've discussed, it's not just a practice for meditation.
No, he encouraged his devotees to engage in self-inquiry throughout the day.
Right.
In every situation.
Every situation they encounter.
Yeah, it's about bringing that awareness, that questioning into our everyday experience.
Right. Every thought, every emotion, every interaction becomes an opportunity to practice vichara, to ask, who is experiencing this?
Totally. Yeah.
And by consistently doing this, we start to loosen the grip of the ego.
Yeah.
Revealing the peace and freedom that lie beneath.
Totally, yeah. It's a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
That has the potential to transform our lives from the inside out.
And I think that's the true legacy of Ramana Maharshi, you know?
It is.
He not only offered this profound path to self-realization, but he made it accessible
to everyone,
to all who sincerely seek it.
Yeah.
He was a spiritual revolutionary, breaking down barriers.
Totally.
And empowering individuals to discover their own inner truth.
And that brings us back to those questions we posed earlier, you know, if this path is truly accessible to everyone, what does that mean for us today?
Yeah.
Can we benefit from Ramana Maharshi's teachings, even if we never had the privilege of meeting him in person?
I think the answer is a resounding yes.
I think so too.
His teachings are a timeless treasure.
They are.
A gift to humanity.
Totally.
And thanks to books like Arthur Osborne's Biography, we have access to his wisdom, his guidance, his grace.
Right at our fingertips.
It's up to us to take that gift.
Yeah.
To explore it, to practice it.
Yeah.
And to see how it can transform our own lives. The journey is ours to take.
Absolutely.
What a powerful note to end on.
Yeah, I love that.
To our listeners, If you're feeling drawn to the teachings of Ramana Maharshi, we encourage you to dive deeper.
Yeah.
Read his works, explore the practice of self-inquiry, and see where this path leads you.
It's worth it.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's so fun.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.
I hope you like this chapter. We need volunteers and sponsors to create content with even better quality and with more variety. If you wish to join this initiative as a volunteer or sponsor, please click the links given in description below. To help us reach more viewers, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Biography Central. Thank you for your time. It means a lot. Namaste.